So they were the first ones that had started interacting with my dad early on. And of course, coming out of military themselves, you know, they had that commonality, and I think maybe Dad helped them make the transition from military back to civilian too, because he'd already been through it. But in the process, they became friends. I think Lord and them were probably his two best friends for a long time. And you know, gradually they started their own families, and things slowed down. But Dad and Ellen found out they had love for the mountains, something they never lost. And even though they spent a lot of time early, that slowed down, but there was always that thing. And like I said, even when I got back out of the Navy and Dad and I were four-wheeling, Emmett would come with us sometimes if he had the time or had the chance. You know, Dad and Emmett just loved the mountains. And I think to their dying days, both of them. So, and I think, you know, Lauren and Emmett were polar opposites of my dad. You know, like I said, I remember Dad as a very serious, strict guy. He didn't do much joking around. Lauren and Emmett were just the opposite. They were always joking around, always cutting, always. And when the two of them were together, it was just mad. Well, this rubbed off on Dad in a good way. I really do. I think it finally made Dad realize that he didn't have to worry about the next day all the time, and he could relax and live a little. And I was always so grateful for that. One instance when I knew it was a pivotal moment for me, when I knew Dad was changing, is because I said he was never a prankster when Dave and I were little kids, but when I was about 12 or 13, when a friend of mine from North Bend, we were sitting on the porch, and it was close to the 4th of July, and of course in those days we had fireworks, things that went boom, just things that went visible. And Dad thought he was going to really mess with my friend and I, and he threw a cherry bomb out the window next to the porch where we were sitting, and hoping to really give us a good scare. And at the last second, I heard the hiss of the thing, and I was able to jump up, but it still had the desired effect. It's like, and I think that was the first time I remember Dad in the house laughing about something, you know. And of course, you know, here's me and my friend, our couple of 10-year-old boys. We're trying to give them heck as much as two 10-year-olds can. But we ended up laughing too. And I thought, man, Dad does have a sense of humor. He does. And from that time on, you know, it just kind of changed with him. And I thank Lord and Emmett for that. And you guys as part of the family. I think that was helped him to get over the life he had grown up with in West Virginia. So, I'm actually kind of free here from where I went. But, I think I'll just end it up, skip some. But Dad was always a guy that he would take, you know, he learned that plans didn't always go as prescribed. But he never complained, and he just always kept going forward. He dealt with it. You know, his life was interrupted, and he had to start over from the Air Force, and things changed here. And just the struggle to finally find a profession and work and get settled. He just was like steady, just kept plowing along. And he never really that all him and Mom experienced over their lifetime, they had been married 69 years when Mom passed away. And in that way, I think we were blessed because not many people can list that in their life's accomplishments. And that's the way I'll always remember it. They made the entire trip through life together.
I wrote my eulogy on my phone, so that's why I'm like looking at it. But I'm not sure I'm going to stick to this. I think I'm going to improvise. Dad was, as my brother said, he was a good man. He was a very good man. He made commitments and kept them. He was the type of person, that generation, they called them the silent generation. The World War II, Korean vets, they were the silent generation, and that was Dad. He didn't really talk all that much about what he was going to do. He wasn't a braggart at all. He just did. He didn't have to talk about it. He just did. He went to Korea. Thank God he didn't have to go on the front lines for our sakes. And he came back from the war unscathed. And Mom and Dad met at the skating rink, as my brother said. They fell in love, and in 2 months they were already married. 2 months. That just doesn't happen these days. In 2 months, and it lasted almost 70 years. Yeah. Crazy, isn't it? That kind of commitment. That was that generation. They made commitments and they kept them. Just steadfast, like a rock. You remember the old Chevy commercial, like a rock. That was Dad. He was like a freaking rock. You know what I'm talking about? Solid. His commitments, once he made them, it was like, that's it. I'm raising these kids. I'm going to find work, and I'm going to take care of business, and that's exactly what he did. Dad's career, he went into electronics. He worked in, first, I think it was Taco Bell, and he worked for RCA, and then he became a telephone tech, learned the telephone business. I remember Dad bringing home all these technical books from his work, and he would study that stuff till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And I remember watching him, and he'd just sit there on the couch and studying his technical books, learning his business. He learned it, and that's why he was so good at it. He ended up at Northern Telecom, and then he ended up, his final place where he worked was in Boulder at the NIST building, National Institutes of Standards and Technology, where the atomic clock was. He took care of their telephone systems. He ran them, and he installed probably 30 or 40 different telephone systems in hotels in the Denver area over his career, and then maintained them after that. He really knew his stuff. The technical side, and that was Dad, Mr. Technical details, you know what I'm saying? And just organized. He was the most organized guy I've ever known in my entire life. And I'm just the opposite. I'm not organized. But Dad was. He was just steady and solid. And when I was young, I wanted to be a musician. And Mom encouraged it because Mom's side was that her whole side of the family was musical. They were all dancing and singing in the house from the time I can remember. At Grandma's house, uncles would all be singing. They had a trio. I think it was Carol, Lauren, and trio, and they would be singing in harmony, you know, and I remember Uncle Warren, he like had great rhythm, he could play bongos and all kinds of instruments. I'm like, wow, that guy's got rhythm, man, I need to learn how to play something. So I became a musician, and Dad, when I was a kid, he didn't actually really like that. He didn't really like it. He came from a steadfast blue collar, you work, you get a blue collar job, and you work, you go into some technical thing or whatever it is, phone lining or something. I remember Mom and Dad, and they kind of had little arguments about, you know, the fact that I was turning into like a musician, starting to already play by the time I was 16, 17. And he didn't really like that. He didn't really support it. And Dad and I had some issues about that when I was young, because that's what I wanted to be, as a musician. He knew that was going to be a tough life. He knew, and it has been, frankly. He was right about that. He knew he wanted me to get just a steady job of some kind. So for the next 35 years, I spent my adult life trying to prove to my dad that I could make a living as a musician. That's what I did. I'm like, I'm going to prove that I can make a living as a musician. And so I started doing that, playing in clubs and all that stuff, and then went on the road in a Christian rock band, blah, blah, blah. But I was starting making a living, and then I did that record out in Nashville for the Sparrow label. And I would take Dad and Mom into the Christian bookstores back in when it first came out, and I would point out, see, there's my record. You know, I was still trying to prove to Dad that I could make a living in music. Still trying to prove it. Isn't it amazing how our fathers shape our entire history, our entire lives? They really do. Because I was going to prove that I could make a living playing music. And so that's what I was trying to do. And I was still trying to do that 5, 6, 7 years ago. To him, I was like, you look, they got this kid, they got that big and everything. And I would tell them. And so in the end, the last few years, and Dad and I finally came to terms, and one of the last conversations we had when he was still coherent about 10 weeks ago, I went and bought him some lunch in the nursing home. His thoughts were starting to really meander and wander around, but he got it out. He got out. He said, "You still playing your music? You still playing your word?" I said, "Yeah, still doing it." And so we reconciled years later, after struggling, you know, in our relationship for so many years. But the last 8 to 10, we had finally reconciled. Two years ago, my professional alto was stolen. My Yamaha alto sax was stolen in a club I was playing. So we just grabbed it and took off. It was worth $2,500. And this will show you the kind of man that Dad was. It was close to Christmas time. We said, "Let's go to the sax store and buy a new one." That was just 2 years ago. And that's what he did. Provided. And it's my son, he's a musician. Let's go get you a new one so you can keep one. And so the song I'm going to play here in a minute was Dad's favorite from the record I did out in Nashville. And it's called Tomorrow. It was originally done by the Winans, which is a gospel group from Nashville. And it talks about a person who knows that they should know Jesus, and they know that they should make a commitment to Christ. They keep waiting until tomorrow. Well, I'll do it, but I'll wait until tomorrow. And that's what the song is about. I made an instrumental version of it. But the lyrics speak that tomorrow might be too late. And so that's my story of Dad, and we'll see you later, Dad.
Anybody else want to share?
Anybody else want to share?
Wasn't expecting to share.
Go
However,
Thank you for showing, thank you guys for coming. Thank you.
sure. As they said, Uncle Sonny was, for me, I remember him coming into our house because our TV was out, or my mom's stereo was out. So she'd call him up, and he would take his lunchtime, and he would come and fix the TV, and we would charge her. Or he'd come maybe on a Saturday when my dad, because my dad owned a beauty shop, and my dad was working. He would come in, and he was extremely nice and pleasant. And he would let me watch it work on the TV or the stereo. And you might think the stereos that we have now is one of those big consoles. It had the record player and it was the AM, FM radio. And so he would have to get in the back there. Those things weigh a ton. And he'd move it out. And he might ask me, I might be watching, hey Scott, can you grab me a crescent wrench, or, and I fortunately knew what they were, so I could get him some stuff. And he'd just sit there, what's new, how you doing? He'd talk to me while he's tinkering on appliances. As I grew older, I realized how my dad would always call him, hey, look, I got a problem with this car, or I got, help me with this. And so we drive all the way from Southwest Denver to Northland, and that was always a treat because we got to go on the freeway. And so we'd take the car up to the garage, and shortly, by this time he had actually built a new garage. And I remember one time, it was December, I was home on leave in the Navy, and I drove from California back home because I was going to leave the car here because I was going to Japan. And my dad calls Uncle Sonny up and says, hey, Scott's having a hard time with this car, and I think it's the starter. So my grandfather, my dad, and I towed the Mustang. My dad's in the back, driving from the Mustang. It's not even started, just pulled. My grandfather's towing it in his truck, and we only had maybe a 10, 12-foot rope that was hooked to it. And it's snowing, it's cold, and we're going from Southwest Denver all the way to Northland. And by this time, you guys had the new garage built. And so he sat there, he said, yeah, the starter's out. So we run to him and my dad ran to the store, the auto parts store, got the starter, put it in, got it running. And I remember anytime he was called, he was always well down. He was always, especially family. He always was willing to help out with family. And like I said, a pleasant, nice man. And then I realized how smart he was. Because he went from repairing TVs, stereos, into the telecom industry, and he was into the computer stuff before, he was ahead of the curve before the computers people really took off on that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, this guy's brilliant. As I hit my later teens and early 20s, I'm like, he's brilliant. And always wonderful memories of Sonny and being with your family and the times that we had, and how faithful and good he was to all our families when we needed him. So, he's going to be missed. We will miss him.
Thank you, Scott. That's a side that we never got to see, or not a lot.
We just go to coffee. Yeah.
I'll get it later.
Okay, well, as Dave gets ready to bring a passage here, it's a beautiful passage. Ecclesiastes 3:1-8. To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to gain and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace.
Well, looks like this could be some trouble, so I'm gonna have to wise this too. Got a technical